see my screen? All right. Sorry if I'm a little fumbly. I just got a new MacBook Pro, and the Zoom on this seems to have a slightly different interface that I'm still getting used to. But all right, we supposedly have 35 people registered here. And let's see how many people we have now. Hold on. Participants. Okay, we have 15 people in the room right now, so we may have as many as 20 more people joining in. And I imagine one of the reasons people might be delayed is it's really early here on the West Coast, at least for me. I'm usually not up by 7 a.m. I know that's super lazy and stuff. Okay, but we can get started with some light introductions and sort of warm up slowly, and we'll let people trickle in as they might. Actually, it might be easier if Mayor, you or somebody else takes back the host and admits people, since I'll be talking. Can you do that?
That's what I've been doing. I'm a co-host.
Oh, okay. So long as somebody's admitting it. Okay, great. All right, and let's see. Okay. So welcome to the first ever Yuck Rover demo day. And on behalf of the entire Yuck Collective, but specifically the Rover team as well. So that's about half of us that you, or at this point, 1/3 of the people you see on this call. So if you could raise your hands, everybody on the Yuck Rover teams, people can see you in the gallery view. So if everybody else, please use the gallery view so you can see us. So there's me, there's Anuraj, there's Eric, there's Rhett, there's Mayor, there's Sai, and Victor, who was with us for most of this year. He unfortunately had a lot of personal work stuff come up, so he's not able to make it today. And Yasha Wilcox, he should hopefully be joining us soon. I don't see him yet. And we'll be doing introductions in a few minutes, but I wanted to set the stage a little bit before we do that. Okay. So, agenda, we'll start with a little bit of introduction to the project and introductions all around, and we'll do that for half an hour. Then we'll get into the demos. We have about half a dozen rovers to show you guys. And then we'll do a couple of sessions, depending on the interest levels and how many people are there, we'll distribute accordingly. But the first half-hour session we want to do is basically an orientation for those of you who want to get into rover robotics. We're doing that on kind of two tracks. One, for those of you who are actually interested in building robots and thinking about like how to get started, Anuraj will be running a session on builds. And for those of you who want to start thinking about like what do you actually do with rovers, what kinds of missions you send them on, Mayor will get everybody thinking on basically missions 101, like how to think about what rovers do. And then we'll go to the other end, and Eric and Sai will be leading a couple of discussions on what we think of as advanced R&D type topics, so rover operating systems and playfulness for rovers. But hopefully we'll be running these at a level that should be accessible to all, even though they're advanced technical topics. The way we are approaching them will hopefully be accessible to anybody with like any sort of general technical background. Let's see, and then hopefully Yasha will be able to join us, and we'll do a little session on rover futures. So as a subset of robotic futures in particular. And then we'll talk a little bit about the roadmap we have planned. So I have been the project manager this year, and Eric will be taking over next year. So he'll lead that session, and then we'll adjourn. So it's 5 hours, and I know it's a lot, and stay for the parts you're able to, and I highly recommend at least staying through the highlight parts of the demo and some parts of the discussions if you can. But yeah, hopefully the 5 hours will pass like that and it'll be all super interesting. A little bit of housekeeping. So the event is being recorded. And if you're not comfortable with that, please turn off your camera and mute. For discussion, we ask that you join the Discord and any substantive discussion sort of do in the thread there. That way we have like a record we can refer back to. And yeah, you can use the Zoom chat for like quick procedural things and technical issues and so forth. Let's see. Take breaks when you want. We're on Zoom. We're on all sorts of different time zones. I'm here on the US West Coast. There's a bunch of people in European time zones. We've got one person in Japan, at least one person in Russia. I see Gregory here, one person in Iceland, hey Star. So all over the world. So take breaks when you need to. And we do have a couple of 5-minute breaks scheduled, but don't wait for that. And if you're eating on the call, feel free to do that. Just mute yourself while you're eating. If you do want to follow up and join us on this project, we do all of our coordination on Chrome. And the link to the starting pages is on the slides. We'll share the slides later, and one of us will share the link somewhere. We have regular meetings for this project at 5:30 UTC or 9:45 US Pacific time. And I'm being sort of like self-centric and mentioning my time zone. But I wanted to mention at least one regular time zone in the US for people here. So yeah, it's in the night for us. And this is an hour every week. And we generally take turns. One of us talks about some updates on our builds, or we talk about research topic, or both. Sometimes we have guest speakers. So Mondays, 5:30 UTC, 9:45 Pacific. That's our regular meeting time. We do have a YouTube channel, and in the last round of our meetings, we've started recording our meetings. So we have like at least, I think, almost a dozen videos from recent meetings with like deep dives by one or the other of us. So if you do feel like diving in, you can go back and browse those videos to see sort of how the project has been evolving. And finally, if you want to learn more about the Yuck Collective itself, this is a decentralized Discord-based online collective of just people pursuing their passion projects, kind of like on a slow lane side thing. It started out as a place for like consulting and gig economy stuff, but it's turned into this sort of more general creative space. So if you're interested, we do invite you to join us. And on Tuesday, we will be doing our annual meeting. So that'll be a great opportunity to learn all about the Yuck Collective and all the other projects we have going on, as well as it'll be a good introduction if you want to dive in and join any of them. So that's all the housekeeping. And anybody have any quick questions on that? If not, we'll get going with the agenda proper. Oh, and hey, David, I want to give a shout out to David Lang, who's on the call here. He was one of the founders of the Open ROV project, which is open source project to do underwater submersibles. And that's been one of the inspirations for this one. So it's great to have David here. All right, so I want to set the stage a little bit, and then we'll do a round of introductions, okay? Okay, so the Yuck rover project is basically sort of this wild moonshot, or rather Mars shot, to try and create an open source space program. And we've kind of set a rhetorical goal of, can we actually get an open source rover to Mars by 2031? And the reason we can even think of such things is we are betting that there'll be rapidly declining launch costs. So Elon Musk, as many of you might know, has promised $10 per kilogram to low Earth orbit, which is like a couple of orders magnitude lower than it is now. I think it's now like $2,000 per kilogram. So if he's actually able to deliver on that promise with Starship and everything else he's building, plus things like, the Starlink constellation around Mars or something, it might be possible to do really cheap rovers. So maybe like today we can do CubeSats for about $100,000. You can send little satellites into orbit, and lots of university departments do that. we might be able to do that with rovers. So it's already kind of heading that way. There's like, I think Google has a kind of open source thing to do a lunar moon race and so forth. So we're getting there. So not entirely science fiction. And for those of you who are new to this sort of thing, we aren't doing anything particularly super novel here. People have been trying to organize this way many times. So yeah, we want to try and build an open source space program, kind of like OpenROV. And as usual, there's a lot involved. There's like technology to do, but there's also a lot of basically social engineering to do. Because this sort of thing, the only institutions capable of doing it so far have been like big centralized governments and agencies like NASA. And how can you get something like Linux-like organization to do it? Well, you need people actually building stuff. You need people building infrastructure, people doing like SciComm, art, design, and media, people doing like networking and relationship building with the other institutions, finding funding, maybe pay your way through the program by doing some consulting along the way, lots of ways to get involved. So this is a little bit of an eye chart to help you think about that. So if you are interested, and again, we are like kind of really looking for people to join us, speaking specifically to those of you, but also we are really open to just, fleeting drive-by participation, interest. Just if you want to come by and like look up what we're doing for a couple of sessions, that's great too. Any cheerleading boosting, that's great too. Feel free to take screenshots and tweet bits from this meeting as we discuss things. And yeah, so that's it. So lots of ways you can participate. And with that, let's pause the stage setting and do some introductions. So I'm going to stop sharing for a few minutes. And if everybody could maximize the gallery view then so we can see each other's faces. And also sort of, if you're comfortable, show your camera. And let's do very quick introductions. It's 7:19, so we started a little late. So let's see how far we can get. We don't have that many people, so it should be good. But your name, where you're located, actually it might be nice if you share your time zone. So what time zone you are, so whether it's night or day for you, what you do for a living, any background in robotics or space you'd like to share, and why you care about robots and space in particular. And let me stop sharing for a second. And if everybody could show your cameras if you're comfortable, and I think speak of you might be best. But I'll get us started and then cue people in the order of the film strip I see across my screen. But yeah, I'm Venkat, and I was one of the people involved in starting the Yuck Collective. And though most of you probably know me as a blogger and a consultant, I am in a past life, I'm a mechanical and aerospace engineer. My PhD was in control theory, and I worked in a robotics lab. Actually, the very first time I worked in a robotics lab was 1996 at the Center for AI and Robotics, which is a defense lab in Bangalore in India. That was my undergrad internship. But yeah, I did a PhD in control theory, focusing on formation flight of UAVs, then a postdoc on sort of military mixed human machine environments at Cornell in Raf de Andrea's lab. And then I was doing a little bit of engineering work at Xerox for a few years, but then I shifted into management, became a consultant. And this is me getting back into robotics after like 13, 14 years. And back then, most of my work was simulation and theory. So I did do a little bit of hardware and on hands-on stuff, but this is actually the first time I'm seriously building anything with my hands. So that's me. And like I said, I'm based in LA, West Coast. So I'll let Mayor Fenster introduce himself next.
Hi, I'm Mayor Fenster. I'm from Israel. When I was in fourth grade, I used to spend a lot of time drawing spaceships. And it just happened that we used to get National Geographic just at the time when NASA did the grand tour of the planets with Voyager 1 and Voyager 2. And that's where space stuck with me. When I worked on my master's, I really wanted to do some sort of autonomous whatever. Didn't work out, but now it did. Now, as to actual background in robotics, some of my work, my day job, I'm a patent attorney, is with robotics companies. Unfortunately, none of them are sending a rover to Mars yet.
Anuraj, you want to go next?
Hi, my name is Anuraj, and I'm currently based in Finland. So I've been in Finland for the last 10 years now. And the first robot I built was in or at least tried to build, was in 2006. So I've been doing it for around 15 years now. But for the last 5 years, I was mostly watching it from the sidelines. So my goal was primarily to become academic, but that idea didn't pan out. So right now I am working for 5G SoCs and writing software for SoCs. And on the sidelines, I build small robots with Yuck Rover. And my background is my bachelor's was in electronics engineering, and then I did my master's in space robotics. So I did for my master's thesis, I was trying to build a small prototype lunar rover. And then I stayed in academia after that for a few more years, and then I went to the startup world, and now I'm working for a corporate and having fun with robotics on the side. Yep.
Right. Eric?
Hello, my name is Eric Platon. I'm from France, but I live in Japan. I've been living in Japan for 21 years now. And so it's midnight, so I'm not very fresh, but I'll be here. And today we'll make an interactive demo. I've been in AI on the software side for a long time, since the 90s. And I worked a lot in software as well, with the hope to make an AI, whatever it means, at some point. I'm also interested in hardware, but not professionally. It's more the hobby. So this project is perfect for that. And well, I hope in this project to make some advances. And my main interest is in the autonomy of the mobile robots, basically. You'll be hearing me in a long demo later, so I will cut it short now. Okay. Nice to have you all, and talk later.
All right, Rhett.
Hi, my name is Rhett. I'm based in Seattle, and I'm probably one of the newer members in this Yuck Rover team here. I software developer in professional life. Way back many years ago when I was in college, I thought I would do this sort of hardware software fusion thing, and was super interested in kind of space systems and that kind of stuff. But after my first EE course, I decided I don't like hardware at all. So I went pure software and never looked back. But I've always kind of wondered about that path not taken, and never got around to building a robot or any of that kind of stuff. So I got interested in that this past year, and heard about this Yuck Rover project, and been enjoying it ever since.
Right, Sai.
Hi, I'm Sai Prasanna. I am currently in Germany, Freiburg. I'm taking my master's in computer science, focusing on robotics stuff. Before that, I was working for 6 years as a software engineer. During the time, I was into a lot of stuff, programming languages, and I was exploring around for two years. And then I thought machine learning and AI was my thing. And I was working on that for 4 years. During that time, I found that I was working on natural language processing, and I did some research in it. But in the end, I thought the scope for artificial intelligence is again back to robotics. I just got reminded of the science fiction, like Isaac Asimov stuff I read about, and I think if machine learning has to have some impact in the real world, it's going to be through robotics. That's just my hunch. And yeah, I want to work towards building autonomous robots that at least do something like animals in the real world. and something solves some tasks like in agriculture or something like that. So yeah, I just joined the Yuck Collective just 2.5 months ago, and yeah, I just been attending the meetings and started working on my robot here, my rover. Yeah.
Right. Thanks, Sai. And I think just by accident, that was all the team members in order on my screen first. So fresh attendees and hopefully future team members now. James Jamona, did I say that right? Yep.
Thanks. Well, I'm here because we connected on Twitter and you invited me along, so thank you. I'm James. I'm on the East Coast outside of DC. Got my physics PhD a year or two ago, and I'm currently an ML engineer here at a startup. But I'm interested in transitioning into like a autonomy engineer position for work. My first robotics experiences were Lego Mindstorms and Beam robots, these little Mark Tilden like analog circuit things. And the reason, and for space, I actually did a summer at the Naval Postgraduate School working on CubeSat star trackers. And the reason I'm interested in robotics, a lot like Sai said, I think like, stepping back to the civilizational scale, you have like, we've moved from human and animal power to kind of like machine power and stuff. And now we're finally getting to like moving a lot of that information processing parts of civilization and maintenance to like some more automated things. So I think it's really going to like unlock a lot of bottlenecks and like kind of be, the industrial revolution for this like, other part of civilization that's still been bottlenecked by people.
All right. Thanks, James. Brian Smith.
Sure. Hello. I'm Brian Smith. I'm in New York City at the moment. I came across the Yuck Collective just surfing the web, and it seemed very interesting. My background, much different from what I've heard so far. I've actually worked in accounting and finance for 20 years, then left and got a master's in mathematics. My interest in this area really kind of is more as a hobbyist. My son, who couldn't join us today, and I, like tinkering with Arduinos, 3D printing, all that sort of stuff. And this actually looked like a fantastic project to actually, achieve a sort of, impactful result of all that tinkering. So I'm excited to hear more about it.
Thanks, Brian. And there may be an accounting finance angle to this project soon, because we're trying to put like blockchain wallets on the rovers so that they can pay each other money.
Oh,
hopefully we get there. David Lang.
Hey, I'm David. Benkat, you gave me a nice intro, but I started Open ROV, which is an underwater project similar to this 10 years ago. And we raised money on Kickstarter, and it got out of control and became a company. And but I'm not doing that anymore. And I'm, just have a long interest in amateur science and technology. And I'm here because it's a fun project to follow along with, and it reminds me a lot of what I saw 10 years ago with the maker movement. And it looks a lot like what Open ROV did back then and what Planet Labs looked like back then, and the CubeSat community. So I'm always attracted to people who are doing things for things other than money. And so, yeah, that's my real interest in being here. And yeah, I'm excited to see the progress, because I caught up with you guys, I think, a few months ago. So, and I'm based in Seattle. So thanks.
Thanks, David. Nalini Mupala.
Yeah, sorry, took a second to unmute. I am an embedded systems engineer I've been working in firmware for several years, almost 20. And recently, about 3-4 years ago, I started moving into leadership, engineering management, and so on. So less hands-on firmware development time, but more exposure to all things embedded, design, hardware designers, contract manufacturers, supply chain lately, and so on. So I came to Yuck Rover via Venkat's blogs and Twitter exposure for Yuck, and I've been following along, but not as active on Yuck as I would like to. So hopefully more active in the future. And I'm based in Maryland, just outside of DC. Thanks.
Thanks, Nalini. Rami Anati.
Yeah, hi there. I'm a friend of Mayor's. That's how I heard of the project. Software engineer based in Israel, tinkering with 3D printing and Arduinos, and just this sounds interesting, so I thought of joining to listen.
Thanks, Rami. Star Simpson.
Hi, I'll just give a brief intro. Telling him from Iceland, really drawn in by the Yuck philosophy. I studied electrical engineering at MIT. I've been interested in robotics since someone gave me like a parallax kit to do Bratenberg vehicle experiments with way back when. Currently founder of a drone company. So it's kind of like building Yuck rovers that fly. And anyway, really excited to see people's rovers today.
Venkat, I think you're muted.
Oh, Jean-Marie Yazbek. Okay. Not sure they're at their computer yet. And next person is just listed as T. Deanne. So I don't know who that is, but if you could introduce yourself.
Can you hear me? Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Okay. So I'm Tian. I'm from. But sorry. Oh, I'm. Germany. I worked in France as a statistician.
We can't hear you. We have to choose between a lot of background noise and you being very, very quiet. Sorry.
All right. Maybe you can do something to fix your microphone, but why don't we come back to you? And if it's still audio problems, you can post a quick intro in the chat. Let's see. Is Jean-Marie Yazbek back with us? I guess not. Jenna said skip me, but Jenna Dixon, she's been one of the pillars of the Yuck Collective for quite a while now, supporting all the projects in different ways. But I'll skip over her. And James Barton.
Hi. Apologies for the no camera. It's not working right now. Don't know why. So I'm British and I live in Poland. I've been doing software for 20 years, more or less. I grew up in the 80s and 90s and was really interested in space, but the space programs themselves were kind of winding down at the time. Their best days were behind them. So, you know, for myself, it never looked like it made sense to try to become an astronaut or an aeronautical engineer or anything like that. So I figured you know, maybe I'll consider moving around bits rather than atoms as a way to make money. And I still think there's lots of interesting stuff in the digital space, but I guess over the last few years, when I've seen new space start to emerge, I've started to, it takes me back to my childhood and a really deep interest that I don't find in many other things. So yeah, I still think moving bits is easier than moving atoms. I've never built a robot in my life. Hopefully I'll change that at some point in the next year. But yeah, maybe the hard stuff is the interesting stuff. So I'm just curious to see what people have built, what they've found possible, and learn something myself. Oh, and yeah, once upon a time, I wanted to be an astrophysicist or a cosmologist or something like that. So, I'm all about the science as well. So this just looks really cool to me.
Thanks, James. And finally, Edwin.
Hi, my name is Edwin. I'm a Bolivian currently living in Colombia, but at the moment I'm in Argentina. So I'm, traveling abroad all the time. I'm here only just to learn more. I've been curious about the Yuck Collective since it was first created, and I was always lurking. And I'm just here,
All right. Looks like Argentina also has a little bit of connectivity problems, along with where Tidiane is from, which I didn't catch. But,
From France.
Oh, okay. We heard that, I think. All right, so we'll get going now, and if people trickle in throughout, we might interrupt briefly to have them introduce themselves. And let's see. Let me share my screen again here. I'll maximize now. Okay. All right. So a little bit more stage setting. So obviously, besides space, we are also interested in robots and rovers on Earth, and that's starting to be a booming sector, as I think many of you have already kind of recognized, since you mentioned it in your reason for interest. And things like package delivery, search rescue, elder care, all these things are also happening at the same time. So there's multiple interest reasons, and there's a lot of interesting tailwinds going on, including efficient batteries, advanced motors, and through the year we've been talking a lot about this stuff. So all these are lowering barrier to entry. So we think at least that it's a great time to get involved in more ambitious robotics. And the reason we think open source is a great way is it allows a very different kind of people to join projects like this. You don't have to be part of NASA or a big university lab or big company lab in order to get involved. Once these things get cheap enough and the barriers to entry are low enough, people like us who are doing other stuff and don't necessarily have heavily equipped robotics labs to work in or a lot of funding, we can actually do interesting stuff that go beyond the toy stuff a lot of you mentioned. I grew up with toy grade robotics as well, but what you can do now is way more than toy grade, but at toy prices. So, oops, where am I? Okay, so these are the rovers, a quick sort of montage of the rovers we'll be looking at today. And you'll see a lot of them, so I won't dwell on this, just wanted to flash this picture. And what we want to do in this project, in the first year, we've basically been doing exploration and discovery, just tinkering, trying to build a few rovers, learn by doing. In the second year, we hope to get more focused and ambitious and do a little bit more social and collaborative work and maybe seek some funding. But we do want to discuss, depending on how many people are still around by the time we get to the end of this session, we want to have an open discussion on what our roadmap might look like. And then hopefully 7-8 years is a long time, and hopefully we can achieve a lot and maybe get to the Mars scale. And I just want to acknowledge Frank Fukuyama just joined, and I'm really pleased to have him here. Hey, Frank. Some of you may recognize the name. He's the author of a really famous political science book called The End of History and Last Man back in the early 90s, which kind of like shaped the post-Cold War era. And more recently, he's written a wonderful 2-volume book called The Origins of Political Order and Political Decay. So that's what he's most famous for. But what people who don't follow him on social media may not be aware of is that he's also like a really long time hardware hacker and tinkerer. He's been building his own computers for decades. He was one of the earliest people I saw building drones, like long before drone kits became available. He was already building them. And he's also been building like really amazing classic furniture. So very wide-ranging interests. And he's also currently building a rover. So that's when I saw him tweeting about that, I reached out and asked if he could join us. So thanks for joining us, Frank. And if you'd like to say a couple of quick things to introduce yourself, you joined us just as we're getting into the demo session.
Yeah, thanks very much, Venkat. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, good. Yeah, well, so I have all these kind of professional interests in global politics and so forth, but what I really love doing is making things. I had been building furniture for like 30 years, and I exhausted myself building a set of kitchen chairs, Windsor kitchen chairs based on a Thomas Mosier design. And so I decided to move back into, so what had happened was I built several drones from 3D robotics in the early 2010s. And I actually had a heart problem because I found myself getting so anxious flying these damn things. So then I just decided to get rid of the whole thing, and I put it away for 10 years. But over the past, because of the lockdown, I decided to get back into it. And so I built this rocker boogie rover, which took like 8 months, I wasn't building it from a kit, I just designed it myself, but learning that was quite a challenge. And now I'm trying to actually upgrade. I still have a couple of my old drones, and so I'm trying to put a PixHawk controller into the old 3D robotics machine, and we'll see if that works. But it's great. Thanks for inviting me to this, and I'm looking forward.